Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for our Living Donation Uncovered live panel discussion. To all of our viewers who are watching on Facebook or YouTube, we wish you a very happy National Donate Life Month. For those of you who are unfamiliar with what National Donate Life Month is, observed in April every year, National Donate Life Month helps to encourage Americans to register as organ, eye, and tissue donor. And it's another opportunity to honor those who have saved lives through the gift of donation. Today, April the 7th, we celebrate Donate Life Living Donor Day. Living organ donation and transplantation was originally developed as a direct result of the critical shortage of deceased donors. Currently, there are 85% of the patients that are waiting on the National Transplant Waiting List are in need of a life-saving kidney transplant. Living donation offers another choice for transplant patient candidates, and it saves 2 lives, the recipient and the next one on the organ donor waiting list. We are here today to uncover living donation and to show you how you can help save lives while living. Joining us today, we have some very special guests. I am very happy to introduce. We have with us today Melissa Owen. She is a transplant dietitian for kidney, liver, heart, living kidney donor transplant, and LVAD at Largo Medical Center, where she has been working for the past 4 years. Her focuses are in outpatient nutrition, counseling, and follow-up for transplant/LVAD recipients and living donors. She is the creator of Living Donor Championship Program and has provided dialysis, community outreach, and transplant education. Welcome, Melissa. Thanks so much for joining us today. Also,
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. We also have Sarah Glass, who is a transplant social worker for liver, living donor, and backup kidney and heart transplant. She is also the supervisor of clinical services at Largo Medical Center and provides outpatient psychosocial follow-up for transplant patients, including addressing barriers and issues and how to overcome them. Sarah started working at Largo Medical Center as a case manager on the transplant floor for 1.5 years until transferring into transplant 3 years ago. Sarah is also the founder of the Liver Support Group, which unfortunately is on hold right now due to COVID restrictions. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. We also have with us our living duo right here, our living donation duo, Brian and Ramji. Brian Hicks is the vice president of audit at Citi, formerly of MetLife, where he met Ramji. He is a remarried father of 6. He loves movies, fishing, the outdoors, sports, and is a proud owner of a little dachshund who he considers to be another member of his family. He has a very nice life and feels very blessed. The donation and transplantation process was a long journey for both he and Ramji, but seeing Ramji flourish again post-transplant and enjoy a happy life with his beautiful family has truly given him endless contentment. Thanks for joining us today, Brian.
Thanks for having me.
And lastly, we have with us Ramji Vayasaraju, who works as a director, PMO office in MetLife's Financial Management Group in Tampa, Florida. Ramji and his wife adopted their daughter and son when they were 14 and 16 months old, respectively, and seeing them now, ages 10 and 13, grow up and being a part of their lives means everything to them. Maya, a mini double doodle, is a recent addition to the family. Ramji loves going on short vacations with family, loves spending time in the mountains, and he was diagnosed with PKD in his 20s. He knew that eventually he was going to need a transplant in order to survive. On June the 5th, 2019, his donor Brian parted ways with his left kidney to make him right. He and his donor are doing very well and have formed a special bond for life. Welcome, Ramji, and thank you for being here.
Pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you all so much for joining. It's really wonderful to see each and every one of you and to have this opportunity to provide education to all of those who are viewing right now on an important topic like living donation. Working at LifeLink as a public affairs coordinator, I can say that within public education, a common misconception and confusion is how our work at LifeLink differs from living donation opportunities. So before we begin talking about living donation, I think it's important to note that at LifeLink, our organization focuses on the deceased donor side of the transplantation process. So we work with donation after death. Organizations like Largo Medical Center have programs established that focus on the recoveries and transplants for those interested in donation while still living. So, Melissa and Sarah, I'm really appreciative of having you both here today to provide an expert point of view on how the living donor programs work at Largo. Melissa, could you share with us a little bit about how long there has been a living donor program within your hospital?
Yeah, so we opened our doors to the Transplant Institute of Florida, which is our center's name here at Largo Medical Center, in 2015. And our first living donor transplant happened in June of 2016. So we've been doing them ever since.
Wow. So a couple of years. I can imagine that from the beginning of the first transplant to now that there have been so many changes and also probably an increase in volume and the amount of people who have been able to receive transplants, which is truly amazing.
A huge increase in volume, especially since we really increased our efforts on talking about living donation and talking to patients and families in our community about living donation. We saw our numbers triple in a matter of 1 or 2 years after starting.
Wow, that's incredible. I'm hoping that our discussion here today is going to have the same impact in education and will encourage people to also become living donors themselves.
Absolutely.
I want to focus a little bit about how last year, March 2020, it marked a change in all of our lives as we once knew it. I think if we had had this panel discussion 2 years ago, we probably would have been in a room together, gathered, but we've definitely learned to adapt to this new virtual environment and post-COVID time. But back in 2020, early 2020, COVID-19 cases were on the rise, and at that time, there wasn't a lot of education or resources available to combat this deadly virus. We saw workplaces closing down, we saw schools closing down, and we even saw that elective surgeries were placed on hold in response to the state of emergency that our entire country was in. And unfortunately, living donation transplants were affected by that, and a lot of surgeries were postponed. I'm interested in knowing how COVID-19 impacted living donation at Largo and what the current status of your program is now.
So the biggest thing that I would say that was kind of our biggest challenge would be kind of the apprehension of the actual patients that wanted to come in to be tested for living donation. As of this time, we have continued to stay open, following CDC guidelines and making sure to do the COVID swabs prior to surgeries. But basically, in a nutshell, last year, it really, the apprehension of people not knowing what was going to happen, not really feeling comfortable actually wanting to come to the hospital or wanting to expose themselves in a clinic with so many unknowns. That was kind of the biggest challenge last year. Also including, we have a lot of donors that come from out of state. So even some of the, flight accommodations and things like that, those were an issue. We did have a few postponed surgeries due to asymptomatic donors that were wanting, and various others. But even if they didn't test positive, they tested positive but didn't have the symptoms, we still had to postpone the surgeries. So, we've continued to stay open, again, following CDC guidelines, doing those COVID swabs, taking every precaution we can. But it has definitely affected the volume that we would normally do.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm happy to hear that you guys are open and are still able to continue doing your life-saving work. And it's interesting that you brought up a lot of that apprehension and that fear that has come with, dealing with COVID and still dealing with that currently. I do think it's amazing, though, that nationally in 2020, that there were over 5,700 transplants that still happened. And it was probably one of the greatest things to hear because it was a little bit of light in the midst of a really dark time. And to know that programs like Largo are continuing to save lives just really shows the dedication that our entire community has to our mission of saving lives. So that's amazing to hear. So I know that this probably is a difficult one to address, being that there probably is no cut and dry answer to what a good candidate is. But if you could give me a couple characteristics, Sarah, what would you say makes someone a good candidate for living donation?
Definitely just overall physical and mental health, overall well-being, basically. So of course, when patients come to get tested, we want to make sure medically that they're stable enough for surgery. So we don't want to put them at a disadvantage by completing a surgery that will then put their own lives in jeopardy. So first and foremost, definitely making sure medically stable. But then, as far as mentally being able to make conscious choices, healthy choices, which leads into why we have the different disciplines on our team to evaluate, to come together to make sure that after the donation process and after the transplant has taken place, that these patients will live healthy, long, successful lives that will not be impacted mentally, physically. Me being the social worker, I focus a lot on mental health and, going back to substance use and kind of social supports and all of these things. And unfortunately, if certain things are lacking, they can have poor outcomes. So just overall making sure that support is there mentally, you can grasp everything that's going on and make those healthy, conscious choices. And again, medically, just being able to withstand the surgery.
Yeah, that's I'm happy to know that there are a lot of, it sounds like, processes and procedures in place to make sure that a lot of evaluation is done on the living donor side. And I heard you mention that making healthy choices is a big part of it as well. So I'd like to ask Melissa, as being our nutritionist on our panel today, what role exactly does nutrition play within the transplantation process for both donor and recipient?
So for donors specifically, it's very prevention based. So we're not going to accept somebody for living donation who we don't believe is healthy enough to do so and healthy enough or have the right tools or resources to maintain their health long term. Like, the goal is to protect the donor. So we want to make sure that they stay healthy. So I come from a counseling standpoint with them, prevention based, maintaining a healthy body weight, preventing high blood pressure or the development of diabetes, which are the two leading causes of kidney disease. Maintaining adequate hydration is very important given the kidneys function in the body. And then for recipients, again, managing those conditions that lead to end-stage renal failure, again, the diabetes or hypertension, when we have the congenital disorders, just making sure that we do the best we can despite maybe any dietary restrictions to maintain the best health possible to take them and carry them strong through transplant, through surgery, and for a long, healthy life afterwards, which again, after transplant, that prevention piece comes back in because we get a fresh start and we want to make sure we maintain that overall good health.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought up prevention. I feel like health in general, nutritional health, is important for everyone, whether you are involved in donation and transplantation or not. And like you were saying, prevention is 100% key. There are a lot of individuals out there who are in need of a life-saving transplant who, either because they've been sick from birth or with circumstances beyond their control, they'll need a transplant. But for a greater majority, there are those that can do things to help prevent needing a transplant later in life. So I think that that's extremely important and key to stay active, to stay healthy, and to have that kind of support, like you said, for the donors, to make sure that even after they're after they've donated, that they still are able to maintain a level of health.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah, so this is another one that I know is not going to maybe have a specific answer, but when we talk about the living donation process from starting, so somebody comes in and says that they're interested and they want to get tested, all the way up to them actually donating, approximately how long is the living donation process?
So At our center, we are very accommodating to our donors to make sure that the process is as streamlined as possible and also kind of fits the timeline that they're looking for. The shortest period of time that we've had from contact to donation was 3 months. So it really can be, even sooner than that, depending, how fast the patients can get themselves through the process. So basically, if we have a donor that says, hey, I need to donate in June, and this is, when I want to do it, our team here tries, as hard as possible to make that happen, because we want to make sure that we're kind of, we always say kind of rolling out the red carpet for our donors. They're doing, a very amazing thing. So we want to make sure it best fits them. And of course, the transplant recipient as well. So like I said, ours, the soonest one for us was kind of 3 months from like them stepping in this, the initial stepping in the door to being, having the surgery scheduled. But again, it really kind of, like you said, varies, but we do accommodate our patients first and foremost. Even if we have to, pull some strings and make it happen faster, we will definitely do that. So
sounds like you guys are very accommodating and flexible. And I have to say that I didn't really know what a good time frame would be, but to hear that 3 months, I feel like that's pretty fast. So that's amazing.
Yeah, because that includes, all the testing, medical workup, meeting the entire team, doing any follow-up with the nephrologist, and then actually, getting the surgery scheduled, doing all the pre-op stuff, the COVID swabbing, and, so that includes it all.
That's a lot in there. It's jam-packed 3 months. So I know that a lot of living donors obviously need to be in good health, mentally, physically. And I think I can imagine that a lot of them are probably working full-time jobs, have families, have a full, robust life. So as far as recovery time goes, if there's anybody out there who's interested in living donation, on average, what is the recovery time for a living donor? How long can they expect to be out before they're resuming normal activities? And that's really what I'm interested in hearing.
So on average, 6 weeks for a full recovery. Typically, the hospital stay is really quite fast. We'll only have them stay for a couple days. Granted, there's no complications or unexpected, things that come up. And they come in for a follow-up with the surgeon once, and this, depending on what they do for a living, if it's a desk job where it's not very laborious, and they can probably go back to work. So it's kind of like a case-by-case basis, but overall it's a 6-week recovery for a laparoscopic donor nephrectomy. Has allowed us to do.
I'm sorry, I think you cut out there at the end. I don't know if it was just for me, but you said it was about 6 weeks for a laparoscopic.
The laparoscopic donor nephrectomy, which is a fancy term for taking the kidney out of the donor. It's considered a minimally invasive surgery, actually, believe it or not. And I was just kind of commenting on how amazing it is what technology has allowed us to do. So.
Yeah, I mean, like when we're talking about surgeries, I automatically feel like my timelines are so much lengthier because I'm thinking it's a couple months that you might be out, but 6 weeks, that is some time, but it's not as long as I was originally thinking. Wow. So if there's anybody out there right now who's listening, and maybe they don't have any type of family member or friend, or as we'll learn to hear earlier, a coworker, anyone around us that may be in need of a transplant, but they still have the desire to donate. Is there anything out there in the community that they're able to still donate a kidney if they're interested, and is that common?
So yes, actually, so that's what we call altruistic donation, which means that's donation without an intended recipient. So basically, you are going into this not knowing who it is that you're donating to. You're just genuinely wanting to be able to help someone else out. So there's actually a lot more people than you think that are interested in altruistic donation. And there's about 2 to 3% of all living donor surgeries that happen are altruistic donors. So that equates to about 100 to 200 altruistic donors per year,
Wow.
Throughout the United States.
A lot of generous people out there.
Yeah. You'd be surprised. They'll even have bumper stickers, things like that, to get kind of the word out. And you'd be surprised that there are really a lot more people than you'd think that just want to do it for the, out of the goodness of their heart and help someone. So there's a lot of people out there that are willing to do that.
That's incredible. I feel like you were saying earlier, that there's the medical technology has allowed us to be able now to recover from a living donor and to transplant. And the fact that there are so many people who are so generous and selfless and want to help, that's even more amazing. So that definitely shocks me to hear, but that's incredible. I can only hope that 2 to 3% increases as time goes on.
Definitely.
Melissa, I want to pick your brain a little bit more on this talk about nutrition. Do you have any piece of advice that you would want to give to a person who is considering living donation?
Biggest piece of advice would be get screened, see a doctor. Even if you don't have any symptoms, make sure that you're getting checked regularly, just because there are underlying conditions that don't have symptoms. So that's something that our living donor evaluation does provide people with. We have, like I mentioned before, some of the specifics for living donation would be maintaining a healthy body weight, which does look different for every body type and shape. Staying hydrated, drinking plenty of water to keep the kidneys producing urine and working, filtering the blood. And preventing hypertension and diabetes. So overall, general healthy diet and lifestyle approaches, exercising a little bit, at least 5 times a week for 30 minutes of moderate exercise, getting plenty of dietary fiber. A heart healthy diet is a great tool to use to reach those goals. So just really the general healthful ways of living that really anyone should take will help keep not only your kidneys, but all of your organs healthy and working.
Yeah, Melissa, that's great advice. And like I was saying earlier, great advice that's applicable for everyone, not just those who are interested in living donation or those waiting on a life-saving transplant. So you've heard it here: healthy diet, exercise, preventative measures, as well as getting screened and getting tested. So thank you so much for that. Sarah, before we wrap up our portion, just talking with you all today, where can someone who's interested in living donation get some more information?
So there's a couple different things that you could check out. Basically, if you're interested in specific information about our program, you could go to the largomedical.com website. There's a whole information section right there on actually living donation. Some videos and things like that, interactive videos. Also, if you're interested in more like general information about the transplants, the numbers, statistics, things like that, you can go to the unos.org website. You can also check out the Donate Life America, LifeLink website, and the American Transplant Society. There's also the National Kidney Foundation website as well. So there's kind of a lot of different information, but again, if you want specific information, you can go to our website. Also, you can give us a call to our living donor coordinator and our living donor champion. It would be able to help with that. Our living donor champion program that was started by Melissa Owen was actually is a program that helps to find the actual transplants recipients. They are able to help figure out someone that would be able to help them And, we could explain that a little bit more in depth if you were to want to call and talk about that a little further. But again, also our living donor coordinator has a lot of information. So she's always knowledgeable, even if you just have a simple question for her.
Yeah, it sounds like there are lots of resources out there available. All the ones that you listed are great ones for anybody who's watching, who's not local to our West Coast of Florida area. But sounds like even Largo has such a great support for anybody out there who's interested. So for anyone who's watching who is local to Florida, our West Coast side of Florida, you can find more information on their website or give them a call. So thank you, ladies, so much.
Thank you. And just remember, donation is just as easy as picking up the phone and calling us and saying, I'd like to donate. And we take it from there.
And even if, you're a little bit apprehensive, that's okay. The point is not that we're here to, push anybody into any certain direction. We're just here to give you the information. And even if it's just a simple conversation to get those questions answered, whether it's something that you end up wanting to pursue or not, we're just here to give you that information and answer all of your questions.
Yeah, information is definitely power, and it sounds like there's great resources available. So anybody who's interested can definitely research, call, and get that information. So thank you, ladies, again. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I want to turn our attention now to focusing on our living donor duo pair, Brian and Ramji. I feel like when we talk about living donation and we hear from our experts on just how the process overall works, it's one thing, but being able to actually put a face to it and hear someone's personal story connects you a lot deeper into the cause and helps you understand it a little bit better. So Ramji, I want to start off with you, and I want to know a little bit about what led you to needing a kidney transplant.
We first found out that the PKD gene runs in our family when my grandfather got sick in 1990, early 1990s. Then nobody really knew about it. He got sick. Later, he was diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease. At that point, doctors suggested that there is a pretty high chance that his children would get it. So my uncle and my dad and my aunts got tested. And at the time, they found out that my dad had it, my uncle had it, and one of the aunts had it. And then, since my father had it, after he passed away, and then I decided to get screened and figure out if I need to be careful or at least do whatever I need to do to avoid the disease, in the hope of avoiding the disease. I found out in early 20s that I also carry the gene, and I know I will eventually need a kidney transplant. So that's so it's, if you call, I'm the third generation person carrying the gene, I guess, with the known history that we have.
Wow. So this was something that was in your family that helped you go and look for the information to see if it was something that you carried as well. Wow. So when you got this news, you said you were diagnosed with PKD in your early 20s. How exactly did your life change when you became sick? Were there things that you could no longer do, or how did your illness affect you?
So the interesting fact about this particular disease is it acts like a very slow poison. It doesn't make you sick right away. I was actually doing fine till I reached 40. But during my annual checkup at the time, when I turned 40, the doctor first time informed me that, Ramji, looks like your kidney function is slowly getting affected. So we have to be more proactive in terms of monitoring the condition. Even at the time, I was still doing fine. I'm doing everything that I needed to do. It didn't really make any difference to me. But around when I turned 45 or so, the kidney function started dropping pretty drastically. And one of the primary effects that you would see is lack of energy. By the end of the day, you'll be sitting in the sofa and you'll be dozing off without notice, right? You don't know that you're actually dozing off. So that's how low your energy would become. Simple tasks like climbing stairs would be difficult. Later, actually, water started accumulating in my lower parts of the legs. 80 degrees outside seems to be too cold for me. I needed to put on 2 or 3 layers. I couldn't really dip my feet in the pool. What seemed to be normal, is not normal anymore. The energy levels basically were so low that I finally resorted to taking like naps throughout the day. At work, I would probably walk to the car, take a nap for 20 minutes or so, and come back and work again. Then after I come home, I do the same. So that's how, as I said, it doesn't really affect you immediately, but over a period of time, how the disease is affecting your body, because you kind of notice what's normal is not normal anymore.
Yeah, it sounds to me like your day-to-day activities became impacted so greatly. I mean, trying to work and having to take breaks and naps. I mean, that I can imagine how challenging that can be. And just simple tasks, like you were saying, trying to go up the stairs, that's hard to deal with. So you were mentioning how you lived with PKD. You were diagnosed at 20. Around 40 is when your doctors started to monitor you a little bit more closely because of the decline in kidney function. But from the moment when your doctors told you, Ramji, you're going to need a kidney transplant, how long was it that you waited until you actually received it?
So Dr. Baliga, who is the director of transplant program at Tampa General, happened to be my nephrologist also. So he wanted me to, because he knows the history and he knows that eventually I need a kidney transplant. He didn't want me to wait till the last minute. So the moment my GFR levels dropped below 20, I theoretically became eligible to register as a transplant patient. So we started the registration process in 2018. And early part of 2018. So it took probably 3 months for me to go through all the tests to get registered and get an official waiting list number through the transplant program at TGH.
Wow. So about 3 months, you said, to actually get listed. And then, so from that moment, from being listed to the time of transplant, how long was that wait?
I would say it's approximately 1.5 years. In fact, I got very lucky only because, Brian happened to know the story and then he came forward. I knew that, from the point of listing myself, it would take probably 5 to 6 years for me to find a cadaverous donation and get a kidney transplant. Knowing the condition and knowing the stuff that I had to deal with, I personally was not really ready to wait that long. Not because I don't have patience, it's just because I just couldn't deal with the pain on a daily basis. So I decided to go public with what's going on with 2 motives. One is to find a donor for myself, and second thing is to educate other people. If I don't get a donor, that's okay. But if somebody listens to the story and somebody else gets a donor, that's a bonus, right? So
Yeah.
that's how the whole campaign started in early part of 2018. And it so happened, Brian, who I used to work in, Brian and I used to work in the same team. So that's how he kind of knew about me. He joined the team that I left. Some of the ex-colleagues told him that, hey, Ramji just talked about he needed a kidney to survive, and Brian got caught wind of the news, and then he jumped into the arena, and then rest is history.
Yeah. So Ramji, you pointed out something really good that I want to expand on a little bit. You were talking about how long people can potentially wait for a kidney transplant. In your case, you said you waited about 1.5 years, but for Americans all over the United States, there are over 107,000 people who are currently waiting for a life-saving transplant. And over 5,000 of them reside here in Florida, over 4,000 in Georgia. And as I mentioned earlier, 85% of those individuals on the list are in need of a kidney. So because there are different forms to kind of keep the body functioning, like, for example, dialysis, and because there is a shortage of people who, there's a shortage of donors, a lot of times people can be waiting years upon years before they ever receive their transplant. So it's so important that we have people like Brian who decided to become a living donor because we're able to save more lives that way. I do want to mosey on over to Brian now that you've kind of brought up how he's, ingrained in your story here. And Brian, I just want to say to you and to all of you who are watching who have a connection to living donation, maybe you're a living donor yourself, thank you so much for your generosity. It's such a selfless gift to be able to give a piece of yourself to help others. And it's something that is so admirable. And in talking with Ramji the other day, he said something that I thought was really great. He said, I don't have a story without Brian. He's the biggest part of the story. And I couldn't agree more. So Brian, how and when did you decide to get tested to become a living donor?
Yeah, so I was actually at work one day at the time. It was MetLife. It was the summer of 2018, I believe. Overheard a water cooler conversation between two of the guys on my team, Mahal and Sean from my projects team. That's the team that Ramji left and I had joined. They said Ramji hadn't been doing well due to a kidney ailment, that being PKD. I didn't know the term at the time. Obviously got to know more later on, but it shocked me. I casually knew Ramji for a number of years. I was in internal audit and actually audited him and his work in the project space. So it shook me up. I really wanted to help in some way, something besides just, standard words, thoughts, and prayers. I really just try to put myself in Ramji's shoes.
Wow. So you heard this story and that's when you decided that you were going to get tested. So when you made that decision, how was the process for you in going through all those tests and what was your experience like?
Where do I begin with the setback? So I don't think my journey or Ramji's journey was very linear. I was screened and then initially denied back in September of 2018. I had back surgery back in 2014, 2015, lumbar lower back surgery. The surgical process of being a living donor requires one to lay on his or her side kind of in a contorted manner for the length of the procedure. I don't remember how long it was, an hour or so. But they felt like that, along with the fact that I had been written some scripts for pain medications in the past year, it put me at risk. They kind of cut the process short. They being Tampa General Hospital, they cut it short at that time. I don't think it went to like a 10 or 12 person approval committee at TGH. So I had to basically wait a period of time, not seek any medical attention for my back. At the time, I had started to do more therapeutic approaches. I was doing soft tissue stuff, chiropractic treatment. So that ended up not being a problem. Second setback happened in January of 2019. So I made it further in the screening process this time. But then I found out based on my labs that my cholesterol, triglycerides, and liver enzymes were elevated. So it was kind of back to the drawing boards. I remember at this particular time being pretty disheartened. Ramji kind of lifted me up there. I think his condition was deteriorating further, but he lifted me up. I think at this time he was needing or about to need dialysis. So it was a tough point in time. I didn't give up at that point. If anyone knows me, I generally don't take no for an answer. Really kind of focused on my health. Ended up getting in the best shape of my life. I was eating right, whole foods, lots of exercise. I was running, playing tennis, doing some cycling. I dropped quite a bit of weight. it was right around 50 pounds. And really, I was in the best shape of my adult life at that time. So finally, in April of 2019, I was approved to be a living donor. Just didn't really seem real at the time. I think Ramji and I were elated. I remember having that conversation in like the supply room at work. And it was emotional. It didn't really feel real. Kind of felt like a fairy tale. Ramji, I don't know if you echo that sentiment, but I felt like we were both kind of walking on clouds at that point. It was emotional.
Brian, you are a resilient person. The fact that there were so many setbacks in your journey, yet you continued to pursue this avenue of living donation, it's 100% admirable. Did Ramji know that you were from the very beginning that you were going through this process, or was this something that you told him later on?
No, we had struck up a friendship at the time. We were pretty close. We were going out and we were meeting on a regular basis, kind of staying in contact, giving each other updates on from both of our perspectives. So pretty much real time, he was given these updates, and it had to be an emotional roller coaster for him as well. The ups and the downs of the journey, if you will.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about the moment that you found out that you were, approved to go through with living donation. And from talking with a lot of our volunteers who happen to be transplant recipients, the one thing that they always touch on is when they get the call that a life-saving organ is available for them. In this case, you got the call that says you were a match to donate. So what were you feeling at that time? Was there anything besides happiness? Were you afraid? Were you concerned at all? What was going through your mind?
It was a swirling of emotion. It was something that I had really pushed to accomplish for a number of months. I remember like when the I think the social worker from Tampa General called me. I was pretty emotional, as one would suspect. Certainly there's a little bit of, wow, this is really real now, and this is going to happen. Natural fear in there to some degree, but I feel like the staff at Tampa General, really kind of helped bring me a level of comfort. And at that point, there was no turning back.
Yeah. So
if I may,
yeah, go ahead.
Throughout this journey, I think it probably is around 10 months of journey for Brian to go through various stages of approval process, getting denied a couple times and trying to get back on the track. I'm sure he had been advised by many people to think twice. Why are you doing this? Do you really have to do this? In spite of whatever he heard, there was not even a single moment that he doubted what he was doing. And not to discount what he was going through, but I really want to thank his family, his kids, his mom, his dad, his wife, everybody behind the scene, right, rooting for him. I think without their positive influence, it probably would have been very hard for him to constantly challenge the idea, right? He never had to do that. He knew that the people behind him are supportive, and so he could just focus on what he needed to do. Prior to beginning the entire journey, he did say one thing to me when he found out that I was getting sick. I was about to be on dialysis. Ramji, I know a lot of people are saying that, we're going to pray for you, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But I really wanted to do something more meaningful. In his mind, more meaningful means being a donor. I think that's what makes him special, because if there is something called a standard of giving, he set the highest standard for it. And if there is something we can measure, whatever he did is the highest threshold that anybody can set. So, as I said, yeah, it's emotional. The only reason why I'm here.
Ramji, I think you expressed it. You expressed it beautifully in just talking about Brian's selflessness, and I'm so happy that we're able to talk with you both today and to hear this story. It's inspiring, I think, and it's going to inspire so many of those that are listening. And I know that's been an emotional journey, but I'm glad to see you in good health. I'm glad to see Brian in good health, and that we're able to impact a lot of people with what we're sharing here today. I want to know a little bit more, and this question is for the both of you, about your recovery process. How was that for you, Ramji? How was it for you, Brian?
Ramji, you want to go first?
For me, to see the creatinine levels getting better every time the doctors test my blood work is just out of the blue. I mean, it's so nice to see what used to be red everywhere, all of a sudden became green. So that's a beautiful, beautiful feeling. In terms of recovery, I think in 3 weeks or so, I was able to drive. And by the end of 6 weeks, I was able to walk 4 miles a day.
Wow, 4 miles.
I know, but 4 miles a day. Right now, I maintain a 6 miles a day average. I can't really do strenuous exercises, so I resort to walking on a regular basis. So right now, my average is 6 miles a day. I know Brian had gone through a huge strenuous amount of time with the first couple of days. The doctors kind of told him that, you know that the pain that you have to go through first couple of days, at least for the first week, is going to be much more than the recipient. He was told that, and it was true. I'm going to have him talk about how he managed that.
Yeah, thanks, Ramji. At near term post-op, my wife is watching this on Facebook, and she's probably going to laugh. I was too active at the hospital during a time in which I should have been laying in a hospital bed. Ramji will call. I was kind of up and walking everywhere, going to see Ramji, walking around the hospital, trying to see everyone. I had visitors. And on that second day, I started to really kind of shake uncontrollably that night. I spiked a little fever. It was rough for a little bit there that evening. But I felt better after the second night, and I was discharged on the morning of the third day. So I think that fits within the timeline laid out. I think it's usually that third day you get discharged. Remember that the first week or so, just tremendous amount of abdominal pain. After that first week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, the pain and the soreness improved considerably, and I went uphill from there. I felt like I possibly could have gone back to work after about a month or so, but proceeded with caution. Didn't formally return to work until about 6 weeks of rest and recovery. So it's interesting. I actually kind of used the time and studied and got a project certification, an Agile Certified Practitioner certification, just to, I guess, use the time and not just Netflix for those 6 weeks. So I kind of put it to use. And did that, something to kind of keep my mind occupied and keep my mind sharp.
Brian, you were much better than me, because I would have taken that time to Netflix for sure. So that's amazing. I appreciate you both sharing about your post-transplant and post-donation recovery stories. I know that you guys have kind of already touched on this, but in terms of how it has changed your life, looking back on it, and what you have been able to do now, are you guys volunteering? Do you guys advocate for donation now? How has it changed both of your lives? Ramji, we can start with you.
I have originally wanted to be very highly active in the LifeLink volunteering division. I believe it's almost no, actually, Feb last year I attended the volunteer training session with the hope that I could be physically present at various activities, trying to talk about my experience and trying to encourage people, how they can help people in need. And then COVID struck, and with the fact that I'm on immunosuppressants, there is always the scare of what if you get hit with COVID and don't have enough defenses. So that kind of stopped the plans of physically being present at the various locations. However, anytime an email comes up in terms of volunteering, speaking opportunities, or any advocacy groups, participation, things like that, I try to sign up. Sometimes people sign up faster than me, and I end up getting rejected. But I did get a couple chances to speak and tell my story. I do want to briefly point out a couple things. And when I did the campaign, there was two primary reasons. One is to obviously find a donor for myself, and the other one is to spread the awareness. As a part of this campaign, there were actually 5 people who came forward. The list started with my wife. She was rejected for a couple conditions that she had, so she was not qualified to be a donor. And there were 2 colleagues from MetLife themselves came forward. They were also rejected for reasons that are not in their control. And when all this was happening, when Brian was going through the screening process, the problem that I faced was I knew that Brian is actively pursuing the donation process, but at the same time, not knowing the prospect of him being approved, I couldn't necessarily, sit back and then wait for that to happen. So we still had to invite other donors who were interested in getting tested. In that process, my neighbor, David, who actually is a director of, I believe, water quality in Sarasota, he came forward and he tested, and he got initially approved for the first part of the screening. And then he waited to make sure that everything in place. So he knew that Brian was testing, and he knew that Brian was approved at the time. So he said, Ramji, I'm going to wait to make sure that everything goes smoothly. And in November 2019, he simply walked into Tampa General and, hey, Ramji doesn't need my kidney anymore. Give my kidney to anyone you need. That's how he is. So there are so many good people that I met during this process. The stories that I came across, the stories that I had to witness, gave me a totally different perspective in terms of life and saving somebody else's lives.
Ramji, I have to say you are very loved. You had 5 people come to get tested. That's incredible. And the fact that you said that one of your goals was to be able to spread this information, not only to find yourself a donor, but to help other people. And you were able to do that because someone else's life got saved because of the education and the advocacy that you provided. So that's incredible. Brian, what would you say? How has transplant changed your life?
I think the whole process has made me more grateful for health, family, and friends. Also gained a lifelong friend in the form of Ramji. I'm an advocate for LifeLink. I've done the birthday charity fundraiser the past couple of years. It's kind of neat. You can, on Facebook, you can point some charity contributions there. Ramji's kind of educated me on what LifeLink does, and I look to continue to do these types of things, spread awareness, spread the word, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and we are so appreciative of it. Our volunteer program is amazing, and we have the best volunteers, and we're happy to have you both as a part of that as well. Ramji, one final question for you. And I know that you shared a little bit about this, and I was really impressed with your 6 miles that you walk every day. I have to say, you outwalk me, which is incredible. But what else can you do now that you've received a transplant? Is there any specific things that you're looking forward to? Any milestone birthdays or celebrations?
I just want to be there for my kids and my wife as long as I can be. That's the goal. I wanna see grandkids. I wanna see kids and grandkids if possible. Be there and help other people, and actually I want to invite Brian and his children and his grandkids to my grandkids' wedding. That's the goal, grandiose goal.
I love it. That's a great goal to have. And I know for a fact that you're going to stay in great health and that you're going to be able to see it. So, Brian, I have one final question for you. For anybody right now who is watching this, I know for me personally, I feel inspired. So I'm sure that you've inspired a lot of people. What advice would you give to others who are considering potentially becoming a living donor?
I think my main piece of advice would be to persevere, fully commit to what you're trying to do. As you can see by my story, it's highly unlikely there won't be roadblocks somewhere in the process. So don't be deterred. In some cases, it can be a long and winding road. It was for me. But I think it made me stronger. I think it made Ramji stronger in the end. Also, Ramji mentioned it, having the support system in place, friends and family who are behind you, who lift you up in times of need. I had a good support system, certainly. And as Ramji had mentioned, it kind of allowed me to focus on my health, get to where I needed to be. I think when people educate themselves and look into this further, the process of being a living donor is really quite safe. There are tons of educational materials out there. So seek that out. In the end, I feel like I'm physically and emotionally healthy. I've put a little weight on post-donation. I'll blame COVID there. But yeah, just it's been a great experience for me, and I can't say enough about it.
I can definitely appreciate the post-COVID weight gain. I understand that there, but I appreciate getting to hear both of your perspectives on living donation. I want to turn it over to our audience members who are watching and give you all an opportunity to ask any questions for any of our panelists here today. As you've been seeing, I hope Melissa, Sarah, Brian, Ramji, you've been seeing these comments pop up from all of those who are viewing. Nothing but positive things are being said. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to write them in your comment section and we can pop them up and get them answered for you. And I'll just give everyone a minute to get typing if they have anything. Okay. I'm not seeing anything come in, but I hope, like I said, I hope that you guys on our panel discussion are reading these comments and that you have the opportunity to check it afterwards because they are really, really great things coming in, just praise and great things happening. So I wanted to just say again, thank you so much, Ramji, Brian, Melissa, and Sarah for joining me today and for helping me educate and shed a light on living donation. Our discussion today is going to reach our communities in Florida and also in Georgia. And with the power of social media and how it is shared these days, it is going to reach many more people in the days to come. For all of you who are watching online and who have tuned into our panel discussion, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here for our very first Live with LifeLink. As a reminder, if you are interested in registering as an organ, eye, and tissue donor, and you're watching from Florida, Georgia, or Puerto Rico, please visit lifelinkfoundation.org. If you click on the yellow tab on the right-hand side that says Say Yes Today, it'll navigate you to your local state registry. and allow you to sign up to become a lifesaver. But please remember that registration does not stop there. Once you have registered, be sure to share your donation decision with your friends and your family. For anyone watching who is interested in learning more about living donation, please go and find more information with your local transplant center. If you are watching and you are living on the West Coast of Florida, that's going to be Largo Medical Center and Tampa General Hospital. And if you're tuning in from Georgia, that's Emory University Hospital, Piedmont, Augusta University Health, and Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. Our next Live with LifeLink panel discussion will take place on April the 13th at 12 p.m. here on Facebook and on YouTube. So please join us as we will be discussing donor-family communications. If you want more information on this panel discussion or the many more that we have coming throughout the month, visit our social media pages or our website for more information. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time.